Hi folks, in this video what we are going to do is go through a better understanding of what the Photoshop interface is and how you may be able to customize it to your own specific needs. One of the reasons why that is important and relevant is because Photoshop can be many things for many different people. And our goal is to basically create a version or an interface that suits our workflow and our needs to the best possible manner, in the best possible manner that it can. So the first thing that you may wish to do is go into the menu at the top, Window, and go into Workspace and say Essentials. Click on Essentials. Now, whatever settings you may have, wherever your palette may be, Photoshop by default will revert it back to its essential format. If it hasn't done that still, then what you may wish to do is go back into Workspace and say Reset Essentials, and it will reset it to its really default behavior, and everything should look very similar to what my screen does. In the event that your screen does not look the same, please remember different versions of Photoshop have had different tools, and the most recent version, which is CC 2018, has potentially added a few tools which did not exist in the older versions. So it doesn't matter what you have and what you don't, whether your screen looks exactly the same or not, as long as you have reset it to the default, that is important. Moving on beyond that, let's begin to identify what the different things are. So on the left, there should be a toolbar, and this is in a single column toolbar. So you can drag and pull it out by clicking on the little line that you see, a very dull line over here. And then all of these are the various tools that at some point in time you will be using in Photoshop. We will go into the details of each tool in a separate video. But for now, understand that this is a toolbar. And every tool that has a little arrow pointing at the bottom right outwards implies that there is a subset of tools available within that tool. So for example, if I took this marquee tool and I keep it clicked in here, so I see there's a rectangular marquee and an elliptical marquee. And then the next one, again, I keep it clicked, which says polygonal lasso. So when I keep it clicked, let's see what happens. So there are three other things within that. Similarly, every tool where you see will have another set of tools. Remember that. Coming down, you'll see these two squares, one black and one white, provided you have reset yourself to the default behavior. So the one on the top is referred to as the foreground color, the one on the bottom is referred to as the background color. And you can cycle through these colors by simply clicking on this little arrow where my cursor is, this arrow that points to the left and to the bottom. So you click on it and it brings the background to the foreground, and the foreground is taken away to the background. Fair enough? Now, if you have any changes in here, so let's say as opposed to a white, for some reason I had a different color, a red, and I wanted to take it back to the default white. So you notice these tiny little two rectangles or squares, black and white. If you click on them, it by default resets itself to the default behavior of black and white. So this is your primary toolbar. Now, this toolbar can be set as a single column or as a two-column toolbar. You have these arrows pointing to the right, so let's see what happens if I click on it. What will happen is it will become a shorter two-column toolbar. And if you wish to revert to the single column, you can do that. And let's say by some accident you clicked on this X over here. Oh my goodness, I've lost my toolbar. Don't panic. Everything is reversible and available. So if you want to bring the toolbar back, simply go into Window, and right down here, notice it says Tools. So click on Tools and the toolbar will re-emerge. So nothing to panic about, because I have seen people stress over, oh, I've lost my toolbar, I don't know what I did. So if you do lose any of the tools or panels or anything, you simply go into the window and start looking for it, and you should be able to find it all over again. Now, in the toolbar, there's a couple of other things that you should be aware of. What they do, I'll explain one in somewhat reasonable detail, the other I'll wait on. So the very first rectangle right at the bottom is called the quick mask. Okay, so it's editing in a quick mask mode, and I'll explain that at a later date in a separate video. And then beneath that are the screen modes. So this is interesting. So if you click on it, you notice how my screen changed. And if you keep clicking on it, and it says, okay, your panels and so on and so forth will be hidden. Now the problem is, if you have done this, you need to know what to do. So you have one of the two options, or both the options are available. Either you can hit the F key on the keyboard, and by simply hitting the F key, all you're really doing is you're cycling through the different screen modes. Or let's say I was in this screen mode and I don't remember the F key. All I have to do is hit escape, and escape will get you out of whichever window you may have been. That's one. So you understand what this is, and if you keep it clicked, once again, since there's an arrow, it shows you what the options are. Now in all these tools, you notice that there's this alphabet associated with this. F on the keyboard is the alphabet or the shortcut key associated to the screen modes, various screen modes. Similarly, all these tools do have, or most of them do have, a keyboard shortcut. So for the Move tool or the Artboard tool, there's V. For the Marquee tool, guess what? M. So if you hit M on the keyboard, you get this marquee. But now there are other marquees. There's elliptical marquee and the rectangular marquee. Both have the same character associated, the same alphabet. So if you press Shift M, you will cycle through the variables of that particular tool within that set. For example, if I took the lasso tool, which is the next one, so I'll hit L on the keyboard, and if you notice on the screen, polygonal lasso tool is L. So I hit L and I've chosen that. But by keeping it clicked, I realized that there are a few other things available. So what if I did Shift and L? You notice my tool is cycling through. So it's a very efficient way of going through, and some of these you will need to perhaps become very comfortable with for efficient working in Photoshop. Now, next, any tool that you see in this toolbar has at the top what you call the options to that particular tool, or the ability to do additional things with that tool, or the preferences of that tool, whatever term you may wish to use. So notice currently I'm in the Move tool, and there's this set that is out there. If I chose any other tool, let's say I'll choose the rectangular or the circular marquee tool. As I choose it, I get a different set of options, variables, everything, and it changes with every single tool. So please pay attention to what the variables may be with each tool, and I will go through the variables of each and every single tool as we move along. So this is one part of it. The second important part are what are known as panels or palettes. So here, this is in the default behavior, there's color, and then there's a secondary tab which says swatches. So to cycle through, all you do is click on them. So here you have specific color swatches coming from a specific color library. and I can go back through there. By the same token, there's properties and there's adjustments. Then there's layers, there's channels, there's paths. These are all different tool sets. So the beauty of understanding how to set up your workspace is that you can customize it to what tools you need, what panels you need. So this is very specific now to, let's say, the photography world. So you guys are photographers and you are interested in Photoshop from a purely photographic perspective. So there are certain tools that you do need, certain tools you don't necessarily need. So that's something you'll need to figure out on your own as to what is relevant to you. But my job is to hopefully help you better understand how to create that environment which is the right workspace for your benefit. So what we're going to do is, let's say there's color here, and let's say what is this panel? So this is a history panel. So what I wish to do is, first and foremost, separate all these panels. So I'm going to open it and drag it out. I'll take the color panel, drag it out. I'll take the swatches panel and drag it out. So all I'm doing is I am simply separating every single panel that exists in here that was in the default space, right? And then I'll come in here and I'll come in here. So am I interested in the learning part of it? No. So all I'm going to do is click on the X over here and it closes itself. Am I particularly keen on the libraries? Well, not at this point in time. So now I have successfully eliminated a couple of the panels. Do I need the swatches? Not particularly at this point either. Do I need colors? Perhaps not immediately. And lo and behold, I have eliminated a whole lot of things because I want to have the most amount of workspace in terms of my desktop so that I can actually work on the image in detail without too much distraction. And now, what else do we need to do with it? So we don't want to have these panels all spread out. So perhaps history and properties may belong together. So what I'm going to do is clump them together. So grab the tab, drag it over, and when you see this blue outline with a sort of a solid blue in this space, let go. What you have successfully done is you have combined the two together. I hope this is making some sense. Then I have a layers panel here. I would like to have my paths associated with it. I wouldn't mind having my channels with it. And maybe what I wish to do is take my adjustments and put it with the history and the properties. Now, all these panels also allow you to scale them a little bit in terms of increasing or decreasing the size. So I can stretch it out or pull it open just in case things get a little excessive in any area. By the same token, in this panel, I can once again do that. Now, what I can also do, which is kind of cool, is tab them together, because I could put all of these tabs in one row, but then I'll be going back and forth and I may want to see properties while I'm doing some changes or adjustment and to be able to see, what kind of information is there. So as opposed to doing that, what I'm going to do is if you grab just from the top, notice I'm not picking it up from here, but from this little bit of tiny space, and bring it next to it until you see this solid blue line and drop it. So what you have done is you have tabbed them together, and you can leave them floating so that you can place them wherever you want, or what you can do is you can take the cursor and bring it all the way to the right edge, and when you see that solid blue line, let go. So what it has done is it has anchored itself to the right side, and you can simply click on this two arrows pointing to the right to collapse if you want more desktop space, or simply click on it and you're good to go. I hope this is making some sense. Now, if you wish to add more things, so for example, I go into my Windows and I would love to have my histogram available. So I have the histogram and the navigator together. Do I need the navigator? Not particularly. I don't find it very useful. But the histogram, oh, for sure, I want the histogram. What other tools do I want? Let's see. I kind of like layer comps once in a while. So I'll bring the layer comps. And what I'm going to do is put the layer comps with the histogram. Do I need notes? Not particularly. So I'm going to pull the notes out and close it. There's one other panel that I am very, very interested in, is the info panel. Okay, so I click on the info panel and the info panel opens up. So I'm going to tab it at the bottom because there are many occasions where I would like to watch what this information is. And now what I want to do is I would like to associate all of this in here. So I pull this out, remember, which I had sort of clipped on to the right. I'll take the whole thing and I'll bring it down until I see the blue line. And guess what? It has all become a singular unit. And I'll bring it over to the right. And there we go. It is anchored. So now you see all of these. And once again, simply close or expand. I hope this is making some sense to you folks. So this is, once you have done this, the smart thing to do is you would like to save this workspace for yourself. So the very first thing, once you think you have achieved it, and even if you haven't, and you want to feel sort of comfortable with what you're doing is, and saving it, go into Window, go into Workspace, and say New Workspace. And give it a name. So for example, in here, I'm just going to call it my name. So I've put it, and menus, toolbars, whatever placement that you have given. So I want my toolbar here, so I'll check it. Keyboard shortcuts, I haven't created any specific, which you can, by the way. Menus, I haven't modified, so I'll leave it alone, and I hit save. So if you go back in here and look at the workspace, notice there is a new workspace that I have got here. So suddenly I decide that, oh, by the way, I'm going to go do some graphic stuff and web stuff. So I can come and click in the graphic and web. And do you notice how the interface changes? But now, do I need to worry about the fact that, oh my goodness, have I lost my original workspace? Absolutely not. So go back into Workspace and pick on the workspace that you had saved. For example, let me show you. It should revert back. So I put this here and I pull this out for whatever reasons. And I was working, and this is what my screen looked like. So I was doing multiple things, and now I need to go back to my original workspace. How easy can it get? So go back into Window, Workspace, right? And reset Asif. Et voila. Everything falls back into place. I am hopeful that this is making some form of sense and that you can optimize yourselves. Now, going one step beyond, on your screens, you may not be seeing the rulers over here. So all of these things pre-exist in Photoshop but may not be available to you by default. So to access most of the stuff in here, if you go into Window and you start, or sorry, I apologize, go into View and you look at rulers, notice it is checked. So if I uncheck it, and there's a shortcut, Command R for the Mac and Control R would be for the PC. So if I uncheck it, guess what? The rulers disappear. And if I want the rulers back, I will simply go into View, Rulers, and click on Rulers, and the rulers come back. Depending on what unit of measurement you're comfortable, you can assign whatever unit of measurement you want, and there's a bunch of them available. To modify the unit of measure over here, currently I'm set to inches on both on the horizontal and the vertical scale. If I go to the actual ruler and right click in there, I can choose whichever unit of measurement I want. Pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, picas, or percentage. So if I were to set it to centimeters, both the horizontal and the vertical rulers will change over to centimeters. Or I can simply go back and change it into inches. This is fairly straightforward stuff. Beyond that, some of the more sort of basic stuff is zooming in, zooming out, and panning. So notice there's a shortcut. On the Mac, it is Command plus for zooming in. For zooming out, it's Command minus. And for the image to fit on screen is Command 0. The same thing applies for a Windows platform where the command is replaced by Control. So you will do Control plus, Control minus, and Control 0 respectively to zoom in, zoom out, or bring the image to its size to fit the screen. By the same token, you can always use the zoom tool which exists on the toolbar right towards the bottom. So you click on it, and you notice the default is that it shows a plus. So I click on it and I can enlarge it, and wherever I click, that becomes the enlargement point. So can I zoom out in here? Unfortunately, this is one tool that doesn't have an option of zooming of secondary, a zoom out option. So the simplest thing is you press the Alt Option key, and while holding it, your cursor becomes a zoom out tool, so you can zoom out. Now, obviously, keyboard shortcuts are always the preferred choice and perhaps the more efficient way of approaching everything. So let's see what happens if I press Command plus. Enlarges itself, Command minus reduces itself, and Command 0 will fit the image on the screen. Next installment, we are going to talk about what the tools are and how they behave. I hope this made sense. If there are any questions, please feel free to get in touch.